the world, is going to mobilize over 400 billion euros of investment by 2027, when this period comes to an end. In Bangladesh, through Global Gateway, we are investing in renewables, infrastructure, and the broader enabling environment for sustainable growth already. Which brings me to make the point that the EU, again, is going through an evolution in the way it engages with Bangladesh. So, not only this shift from the old lens to the new, but also in terms of development cooperation, moving from a primary focus on grant financing to stepping in and sharing the way that we do things, to something that is much more about blended finance, lending, guaranteeing lending and investment from the private sector, as well as from our countries, our member states, and also helping in this manner unlock investment and supporting reform. So we are stretching our resources. This is a very major evolution in the way we work here. And it reflects the reality of your economic success. It reflects the reality of a country whose needs and ambitions increasingly call for partnership models, not traditional aid models, not the imposition of what may be great ideas from Europe but do not work in the Bangladeshi context. No, we want to share our experience, but it's going to be through your expertise and your capacity that you will make this next transition. We fully recognize that, we welcome that. So I want you to watch this space for announcements on port investment in your country, in Chattogram, for announcements on green bond issuance, channeled through your financial system, denominated in Dhaka, but guaranteed by the European Union budget. That is the beauty of it. Watch this space also for guarantees for the private sector that make full use of the EU's AAA rating in borrowing from the international markets and on lending for your benefit. At the same time, our development cooperation, what we have already ongoing, this older model is still substantial. We have just under 1 billion euros in ongoing contracts, live contracts, grant financing in your country. So the scale is huge. We're the #1 development partner. Here, the priority has been, for the past years, human capital development, also extending to huge support for universities and technical and vocational education and training. It's about green inclusive development and governance reform. And these priorities reflect the very clear view that we have that growth alone is not enough. Growth must be inclusive, and it must create decent work, develop skills, and strengthen education, healthcare, and social protection, equipping you, young people, with the opportunity to thrive. It's especially important in Bangladesh, where the energy, talent, and aspirations of young people are among this country's greatest strengths. So we're listening to young Bangladeshis. You will grill me later, I hope. But we're listening to you because we want to expand the opportunities for you. We see you as the next generation of leaders. The country needs to innovate. It needs the critical thinking that the Vice-Chancellor so clearly spoke of, so that your skills, education are improved, and you can enjoy the mobility offer that we put on the table, and ultimately that we deepen people-to-people ties. So this has been a record year for Bangladeshis to travel to the EU to study with our scholarship program. I'm delighted to see that. It's striking that the EU remains relatively absent from higher education here in this country compared to with the scale of our relationship. So I'm looking forward. I will come and talk to the Vice-Chancellor. But I do want to share the good news that we do have a partnership this year, a first time, with Khulna University that will lead to the teaching of a Jean Monnet action. This means teaching about European Union policies on green transition and on sustainable urban environments. And that will start in Khulna, and I hope it spreads across the country to all academic institutions. I also want to underline the potential for research partnerships. Enormous capacity in Bangladesh and very little in terms of partnerships. We want to come here and we want to build that closer people-to-people relationship. And the very simple point is that if our partnership is to be truly strategic, it must be understood not only by people like me, or you, Zilla, but also by students, and businessmen, and scholars and entrepreneurs. And this P2P or people-to-people side of our relationship is absolutely fundamental. If I can't get the EU understood by you or the opportunities picked up by you, then I have to reevaluate how I'm doing my job, because actually it is your response that I need to be positive. It is the next generation that needs to understand how the EU can be helpful to you, what our role is, what the limitations are, but equally the reality of our relationship. So today is sadly the 9th anniversary of the Rohingya refugee crisis. I need to mention that we are a major humanitarian actor in Bangladesh. Since the beginning of the crisis in 2017, the EU has provided more than €500 million in support, and this year we have more than €50 million in assistance contracts ongoing for development purposes, for humanitarian needs, and also for accountability for the crimes committed against the Rohingya population. Now, in Bangladesh, 50 million plus this year alone. I want to underline that we are helping not only the refugees, we are also helping the host communities in Cox's Bazar. How important is it for us to do no harm? What we do in that region has to be for the benefit of the local population bearing the burden as well as the refugees. We do believe in doing no harm. Now, still on the issue of the Rohingya crisis, what we support is a voluntary, safe, dignified and sustainable return of the refugees to Myanmar, but we recognize the burden that Bangladesh bears, and we recognize the need for sustained international attention and responsibility sharing. This too, for me, is what responsible partnership means. It means standing with one another in the face of shared or disproportionate burdens. So let me now say, I'm coming to the end, but I want to say a few words about the geopolitics, because geopolitics is a tough place right now. In the Indo-Pacific, I want to underline that for the European Union, this region has become central to us, also to global politics and economics. Our strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific reflects our commitment to our region and our commitment that this region should remain free, open, inclusive, peaceful, and rules-based. There are many challenges to this, very many challenges, but this is in your interest as much as it is in ours. Bangladesh is so important in that vision of a peaceful Indo-Pacific because of your geography, your economic weight, your population, your demographic dynamism, if I can put it like that, and frankly, your role in regional stability. So we see how important it is. And we share, just to give one example, a conviction that navigation must remain free. This is important in the Bay of Bengal, in the broader Indo-Pacific, in the Strait of Hormuz. It is essential everywhere. Fundamental, rules-based, effective multilateralism will protect your interest and ours. So, maritime trade routes are your lifeblood, but they're also ours in Europe. Let me say one word about security-related issues. Many of you may think, wow, the EU, why is the EU talking about security-related issues? Well, I spoke already about our Defence Commissioner, so there is an evolution. In Bangladesh, we are actively working on maritime security with your military, on port safety with your port authority, on countering violent extremism with your law enforcement agencies, on countering the trafficking and smuggling of migrants with the broader government authorities responsible for this work. And while this may once have seemed peripheral to the EU-Bangladesh relationship, these issues are no longer peripheral. Security, connectivity, trade, technology, and resilience now intersect very, very closely. And that is our reality in this world of today, that the intertwining of security, geopolitics, and economics. As a diplomat, I feel challenged each and every day. Perhaps this is good. We don't rest on our laurels, but the insecurity or the uncertainty generated by the current geopolitical context is deeply concerning. Let me then make my broader point that the world is transactional. It is just more transactional than it ever has been in my lifetime. The competition between great powers is sharpening. Countries such as Bangladesh face pressure to balance relationships and to navigate a complex external environment. We also face these challenges. We are a stronger economy, a wealthier power, but no less subject to the vagaries of others who wish to tell us what we should do and how we should behave and reconstruct an international system that has actually served us very well. So we understand this. We don't ask Bangladesh to choose slogans. We ask Bangladesh to undertake a clear-eyed assessment of what your partners actually bring. We ask you to speak up vocally in favor of multilateral rules that serve your interests. And the question I have for you, which we may come to later, which of your partners do you look to support democratic reform, which I think most people in the room will want to see, a functioning democracy? Which partners will be here helping you improve your respect for fundamental rights and judicial independence? Is that a priority for you sitting in this room? It should be, in my view, but I'm very opinionated. Who is your partner that's going to invest in climate resilience when you are literally sinking, when your agricultural land on the Bay of Bengal is becoming increasingly salinized? Who is going to promote a fair green transition? Is that a priority for the young generation? I certainly hope so. Which of us, as partners for you, offers open, rules-based trade? Who believes in a level playing field where Bangladeshi companies will have the opportunity to compete with European companies on the same basis? And you have talent. There is no doubt that you are competitive in a number of sectors. Who stands by international law at this time, rather than simply invoking it when it is convenient, playing games around international law? Do you believe that international law matters for Bangladesh? Rhetorical questions for now, but not rhetorical, strategic in reality. So our proposition is that our partnership with Bangladesh should be anchored in long-term mutual interest, which is clear, not short-term convenience. It should not be anchored in even worse approaches, such as those who sell debt as aid, or those who sell control as partnership. We actually rather like the idea of strategic autonomy for you as well as for us, meaning autonomy of your decision-making in your interest. And we seek a relationship with you based on trust, fairness, and shared purpose. The basis for that exists. As I mentioned, the EU is one of the world's largest economies, one of the world's leading trading powers. With our EU member states, we are the largest provider of funding to the United Nations and the largest provider of official development assistance globally. We are also a major actor in the humanitarian field, climate action and standard setting, from digital, where you have enormous ambition, to food safety, to environmental policy. So what happens in Brussels, my headquarters, matters, including for countries whose economic future, yours, is intrinsically linked to global standards and sustainable value change. For Bangladesh, understanding and investing in the EU, this is my clear point, is strategic. Please spend time to understand how we work. I will spend time with you to explain what our priorities are. For the EU, investing in Bangladesh offers opportunities. You're a success story in development terms. You're a country of scale, ambition, and consequence. This relationship matters in South Asia. You matter in South Asia. You matter in the Bay of Bengal. And you matter in the Indo-Pacific. In global debates that will shape the coming decades on labor, migration, climate, connectivity, and economic transformation, this relationship, EU-Bangladesh, should be one that is there at the start of the conversation, not an afterthought. And I need only point to your UNGA presidency, your foreign minister, chairing the United Nations General Assembly this year, so that your importance for multilateral rules and that system is so incredibly central. It's a very good illustration. So let me conclude. The relationship is evolving because the world is evolving. It is becoming more strategic because the times demand it. In this age of uncertainty, both you and the EU need dependable partners, principled partners, and forward-looking partners. And that is what we have on offer. So we support your reform. We are here to promote stability and prosperity. We are investing in sustainable growth for our benefit, but also for yours. And we are here to cooperate on global challenges, starting with climate, but not finishing with climate. The SDGs matter to us. So we are here for the long term. The future of the relationship will depend on goodwill, but also on choices. So there are political choices ahead of this government to deepen trust, to sustain reform, to work on governance issues, build competitiveness, and to recognize the real value of reliable partnership in a divided world. And my advice to Bangladesh, and to all of you listening this morning, is to not get stuck in dependencies that will limit your autonomy of decision making. The potential of this relationship is immense. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Miller. You have already given us several issues and also raised a few critical questions to think about. Let us now continue to the conversation. Ambassador Miller, you arrived in Bangladesh during an extraordinary political period. Having now seen the country through transition and election, how do you see Bangladesh today compared with when you first arrived?
I arrived right at the start of September of 2024 at a moment when indeed there was no parliament, there was an interim government, you had a president who was the remaining link with the constitution, and of course I have lived through a transition period now of 18 months with the interim government led by Professor Yunus, leading up to the holding of elections that we considered were extremely well run, free and fair, in line with the international standards, in line with our expectations. And this whole period of transition was, of course, it's a challenge to move from a situation in which you had an autocratic government that hollowed out the state's institutions and the democratic institutions of your country, to move from that situation through an interim period to elections. I have to say that I actually I landed here with a very different expectation from my time, and I was honored to be able to work through the transition, first with the interim government, now with the elected BNP-led government, to try to move a number of issues forward, to try to rebuild some of the institutions of state, to share our experience, as I've mentioned during my intervention. How did the EU actually undertake this very same journey between 1989 and essentially 2004? But I will say that for our member states and for Bangladesh, this transition is never ending. It is a process. So the need to rebuild trust between the citizen and the state is perpetual. It's a renewal in Europe as in Bangladesh. The same for reforms. And when we started, you didn't mention one point from my CV, which is that my very last job before coming here was to negotiate the accession of the Western Balkan countries to the EU. I will cross my fingers and I will say that I'm very hopeful that we will see a new member state in the EU in 2028. No guarantees, but I see a huge change and a huge ambition to move accession forward. Why I mention this is that I came with what could be described as a professional deformation. Mm-hmm. The professional deformation is that all of this work on reform processes in the Western Balkans was geared to help those countries modernize, diversify the economy, engage in rule of law reforms, uphold fundamental rights in line with our standards. And I came to Bangladesh actually when the transition was launched, and I then sat and explored with your political leadership, but also with civil society, to see what is the level of ambition when it comes to judicial reform, can I bring expertise from the EU member states to Bangladesh, for example, to talk about the establishment of commercial courts? Can I bring expertise from the EU member states to talk about e-governance, to talk about removing some of the opportunities for corruption in the relationship between the citizen and the state when it comes to obtaining services? And actually the answer was yes, we could do this work here. The level of ambition is sometimes, it is not the same as if you are trying to accede to the EU, but the principle is still there. It is that we have experience. Our member states' administrations are full of people who have been doing this work for decades, and this is on offer to Bangladesh. So actually, this was a great experience, I have to tell you. What happens next? Well, we have a functioning parliament, we have a newly elected president, we have a government that is in place, that was elected as a result of elections. We are here to support this government. We are here to support the efficient functioning of Bangladesh's institutions, and we are here to map out how reforms can be taken forward and how the relationship can be deepened and rendered more strategic for the benefit of you and us. And I hope in my presentation I have made this point that we have interests in Bangladesh. They are commercial, they are also political, they are also migration, but we will work with you, with all of you, to identify where the common ground exists. We are not here to impose quite obviously unfair terms upon Bangladesh. We are here to build a partnership of equals.
Thank you. We got it. As you mentioned in your opening remarks, that for many years Bangladesh-EU relations were largely associated with the development, cooperation and trade. Are we now moving towards a broader political and strategic partnership?
We are. So at the risk of repeating myself, I will say that the starting point was rather technocratic, and you have evolved. Bangladesh has changed, but the EU is unrecognizable. So I started my comment with 30 years working for the European Union, working for European integration. The ambition we had in 1996 was frankly not comparable to the political ambition that we have in 2026. So our approach changes just as you change, and this leads us to venture from economic, commercial, developmental cooperation to more strategic, more political, perhaps sometimes more hands-on intervention in helping you with reforming your governance. But since we have this wealth of experience, and since we have open ears on the other side in Dhaka, we pursue this because the level of ambition is there for us to define.
Bangladesh has entered a new political phase. From the EU's perspective, what should now be the priorities for strengthening democratic institutions and public trust?
It's, as I said, this will take time. So there is a realism that is required. Nevertheless, I would say two things are very important. One is to map out very clearly where you want to end up. This requires extremely clear policy making, consultation with civil society and other, respect also for hierarchy, for your elders, for